Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, I'm Sean, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. I have a simple question for you. Do you know what's the uniqueness of this podcast? So if you were to recommend this podcast to someone else, what would you say? In previous episodes, we've gone over uniqueness, how to create a second level uniqueness. And yet every product of yours, every service, it all needs its own uniqueness. If the company doesn't have a uniqueness, that's okay. But the product, it needs its own uniqueness. That's why when I ask you, what is the uniqueness of this podcast? What we'll get is a whole bunch of answers. Some of you might say it's the music. Some of you might say that it's just 20 minutes long. Some of you might say it's broken up in 3 parts. Some of you might. So what you're actually rattling out are the different features of the podcast. And when we started out this podcast, we said that it's binge-worthy. And that was it. So we said that for a while, and then clients kept saying, yep, it's binge-worthy. So we'd get emails and they would say it's binge-worthy. So this is the beauty of uniqueness, that when you create something, and it doesn't always have to be great, it just needs to be put out on a regular basis. And then what you get is this echo. Now, to get to this podcast itself, you've never heard me say the uniqueness of this podcast, well, not recently anyway. But then I was talking to a client in 5000 BC, and he said, the reason why I listen to this podcast is because it's very calming. Whenever I listen to several other marketing podcasts, they tend to be shrill. They tend to get my heart rate up. They tend to make me panicky, like I'm missing out on something. And when I listen to the 3-Month Vacation, it calms me down. It's like you're making the mistakes. You're going through things like I'm going through. It's calming me down. Anyway, I didn't do anything about that information. I filed it away in my brain. And then a second client said the same thing, which is, the other podcasts, they get me nervous, they get me jittery, they speak too quickly, the music, yes, even the music sets my heart racing as if I'm missing out. So there's this FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And she says, I feel that consistently with the other podcasts. And then a third person said it, at which point you're supposed to listen. And that's what we're doing right now. In an earlier podcast, I mentioned how you need to listen to what clients say on a consistent basis. So clients will tell you why they listen to a podcast or why they buy a product, why they buy a service. And then they will go through 3 other points maybe. You're asking them questions and they relax a bit, and then in those 3 other points, they come back and say, because it's calm. And the second person says, because it's calming. And the third person says, because it's calming. And it's taken us a while. I would say it's taken us about 6 months to pay attention to this. 6 months. Not a lot to do. You just have to go, what does the competition do? What do we do? And how do we do it differently? And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about the competition, which tends to get a lot of people feeling like they're missing out. And this podcast that tells you that you're going at exactly the speed that you need to go, that it calms you down. It doesn't get you all jittery. And it does so in a structured way. Notice how uncomplicated that uniqueness was. If you've been selling a product, you've been selling a service, or you have a podcast or a webinar or something on YouTube, well, think about it this way. Ask your clients and get that feedback. And then at that point in time, you want to make sure that you put these two structures together, which is what do the other people look like? What does the competition look like? What do we look like? And then how do we do it? Just a little how do we do it? Jittery, calm, end of story. That's what it's all about. Now, once you have that clarity in your uniqueness, what you need to do is you need to state it time and time again. And you've heard me do this with 5000 BC. You've heard me say that it's not about grandstanding like in other forums and in other membership sites, but that people are kind and helpful in this forum. And that helps you move forward. So it's a very simple phrase, but now you've got to say it over and over again. And you've heard me say this over and over again on this podcast. And really, that's the whole factor of uniqueness, that you want to make sure that you get this very uncomplicated message together and then repeat it over and over again. And sometimes what's going to happen is that clients will come back, just like they did with the podcast. We went from binge-worthy, which really meant nothing, to this calming effect. And that's where we'll stay. And that's what will go out consistently. And that's how you'll be able to tell someone who says, oh, I already listened to a lot of podcasts. Why should I listen to another one? Now you have a statement. Now you have a uniqueness that you can pass on. But this has come from customer feedback. And that's something that you should do. Start off with a uniqueness that may or may not be too great. See the feedback that you get. Then put in what the customers are saying on a consistent basis and repeat that over and over again, and you have your uniqueness. And this brings us to the end of this podcast. What's the one thing that you can do today? You're sure to have a presentation or a product or a service that you're selling or you're promoting right at this moment. Don't worry about the stuff that you've done in the past. That's all unattended to. Just what you're doing right now. Get this little comparison going, create your uniqueness, and get started. So let's find out what's happening in Psychotactics land. The article writing home study, that was on the 5th of April. If you've missed that, still go to psychotactics.com/AW, that stands for article writing goodies, so that you can get some goodies. And, well, the next time around, when it's available, you'll get it. Now, you know that there are only 25 copies that we sell, and once we sold that, which is what we did, we're done. The second thing is the pre-sale course. Now, that's on the 7th of June. As you probably know, we do reasonably well selling out courses and workshops and books and all of the stuff that we're selling at a very high speed. And you're probably wondering, well, you're starting out, what are you going to do? Well, right at the beginning of this book is the story of a guy that you're probably familiar with, Pilates. His name was Joseph Pilates, and he too didn't have a business. So he got going from nowhere, and his whole method was one of pre-sale. That's what's explained in the book, and you get examples, and you see what we're doing that creates this urgency, creates this scarcity. So that pre-sale is available on the 7th of June. And if you want to get on the waiting list, if you want to get some goodies, then go to psychotactics.com/PRE, that's pre-goodies, and you'll get it. And that's it from Psychotactics Land. Hope you're having a good day, and we'll see you in 5000 BC. And you know what's the uniqueness of this podcast? Yep, it's the calming one. Not the jittery one, the calming one. Bye for now.